Hello and welcome to the Wearing Hats Saying Things podcast, the podcast that takes a stand against racism. That's right, today's episode is going to be all about Black Lives Matter. We think it's an incredibly important matter that we need to discuss and that needs discussing more in today's society. I'm of course joined by Mr. Ronan Gaffney. As always, say hello, Ronan.
Hello.
Hello. How are you keeping? Are you keeping well?
Yeah, relatively. It's all good this end.
It's all good. And of course, that is not all. We are joined by a special guest today. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, people at home. My name is Merez Bao. Very happy to be joining the Wearing Hats Saying Things podcast for the second time.
Nearly messed up there.
Yeah, fuck that up, man. Take two. That's just for the viewers at home to realise how authentic this is, obviously. All off the top of the head.
Of course.
With a hat on top. Not this week, though.
And do you want to tell us just a little bit about yourself as well, Merez?
Okay, I'm Merez. I'm a practicing visual artist and poet. And wannabe activist, I suppose, in these trying times. I remember I'd done like almost a timeline of brutality on black people. And I'm not saying this is all what happened throughout history, except I remember drawing, these figures, and it would start off as a whip, and then it would be a lynch, and then it would be a club, and then it would be a gun. And I remember thinking when this happened, now it's a more disguised way of doing it. It's a knee on the neck. So that's kind of where we're at. There's just all these ways of killing black people, but it just disguises and transforms throughout history.
Yeah, it's a good point actually to raise, because obviously a lot of the time it's, police brutality is, like they're shooting someone, or you're saying, they have a bat or something like that. But bat's the wrong word to use, but a weapon, a baton, a club, but a weapon of some sort. Whereas this is just a human being's limb.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's nothing to do with the weapon that's being used. I think it's always been the same notion of racism, and we're a bit desensitized to all these horrible images and all these deaths, because it is all these deaths. There are so many and so many names that have come up that have been dealt with in so many different ways, but the bottom line is that it's fight against racist discrimination in all its forms, I think, and it's just as bad in every single version of it, to be honest.
Definitely.
Then for you, Merez, obviously, have you ever received any yourself?
Yeah, interestingly enough, I never had racism, I think, so much against me until I left Glasgow. Which doesn't really make sense, does it?
Yeah, and you left Glasgow because you were like 10 or something?
Yeah, I left Glasgow when I was 10 and I moved to Coventry in the Midlands. And when I was there, I got spat on and called a Paki, which never really made sense to me until I got older. And then even in St Albans, I got spat at by a guy across the road saying, "You love Iraq," been called a sand N-word, But what I was going to say, compared to Britain, where some people will say Britain's not as racist. And of course, we've hundreds of, well, maybe not hundreds, but we have had a lot of shootings actually against black people on our own soil. But what I was going to say, there's this quote from Daniel Kaluuya, which is, in Britain, racism isn't always seen as much as it's felt. And for me, it's always been, obviously I'm a mixed race guy. I don't look that black. I definitely don't look that white. I look more Asian than anything, but I just look enough of something that people can feel comfortable enough to perhaps be racist around me, or have these little microaggressions to me. So the racism that I've encountered most would be the classic, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. Where are you from? And then you tell them, Glasgow. And people go, no, where are you really from? Or who's your exotic friend? That one fucking always kicks me in the fucking nuts. Like, where do you think I'm from? The fucking Amazon? No, you're exotic friend.
Am I a parrot or something? It's just,
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't actually realise that is a microaggression. It can make people feel, at the very best, uncomfortable.
Yeah. Simply
asking, where are you from? And it's like, you're just asking an English person in England where they're from.
Yeah.
And they don't even, it's like, even if they immediately know what you mean and they don't take it badly, it's that whole thing of the assumption that you're a foreigner and that person may identify as English, and you shouldn't, it's not like anyone might mean anything bad by asking that. They could just be interested. At the same time, you need to understand it's not really okay to just go and ask those kind of questions. Like, people don't come up to me and ask me where I'm from, even though I'm not, 100% English, or, it's not something that gets put onto white people. So we don't really understand that that's not okay to be saying it. And that's, I think, a lot of what white people need to understand, or simply to learn about, is that just because you don't mean any wrong doesn't mean you can't be causing anyone to feel bad or to feel discriminated against.
Certainly.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, go back to the quote you gave, Meredith, of racism always seen but felt in the UK. Do you think that has something to do with a lot of white privilege and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'd definitely say so. And like what Ronan was just saying, that like a lot of people aren't aware of that they have it, or that they've never had to deal with situations
like
themselves.
I was just saying as well, because obviously, obviously since you moved down here, I don't know when I can't remember what age you were when you moved down to St Albans. But it's sort of this area where we live in St Albans, which is a more predominantly white background here. So I guess we would maybe even fall into that category of like we don't always see it because of the area that we grow up in. I think that is like a lot of people see it more than we would. Probably people who living in more multicultural areas such as London and stuff would see it a lot more, whereas us here, we're kind of very sheltered from it all.
I think as well, like, correct me if I'm wrong, Maris, but some of what you meant by being seen and not being seen but being felt is simply that our privilege, and that's what it is basically like a filter, and we don't really know that some things are essentially not racist on the on like the front of it, but essentially it is discriminatory, but we just don't realize that it is being that because of where we come from and what we're used to and what we're taught, etc.
Spot on,
and exactly that. And also, I'm not saying that I've not done it. As much as I am mixed race, I've still had a bit of privilege, or a lot of privilege, compared to people that are black or like literally Asian. I'm not like, I'm more confusing to people when they first look at me or something like that. So we all do have that privilege. It's just, what do you do with that privilege to your advantage? It's not a bad thing necessarily. It's just like a lot of people around here that we all know will come from wealth. That doesn't make them a bad person. It's not even necessarily they need to distribute their wealth or anything like that. They just need to use that privilege, that benefit of the class and education they've had to go on in better things.
Yeah, and obviously, promote it and everything. And that is obviously what we're going to be talking about actually now, is maybe what we've done in terms of the fight against racism, what we might have gone and seen. So I'll get the ball rolling on that and say, so I went to the St Albans Black Lives Matter protest, which obviously there's a lot of controversy with a lot of people as to whether these protests should have gone ahead, which I'll go into in a little bit. But I went to this protest and it was very, very well observed, very well organised, very well socially distanced, which is one of the reasons why a lot of people are maybe getting a little bit het up or questioning if they should be going ahead. But it was a very peaceful protest and it was very powerful, particularly as this is quite a white-dominated area. Is that a good way of saying it?
That is true.
It really is, Particularly as it is quite a white-dominated area. it was very powerful to see, and all these different types of people coming out and supporting the movement. So yeah, it was, and there was no kind of violence or anything that you might have seen elsewhere. Obviously, I know you've been to a couple. Tell us a little bit about that, Meres.
Yeah, so I went to 2 in Leeds. Black Voices Matter. Black Voices Matter and Black Lives Matter in Leeds. Week apart, both on the Sunday. And again, like you say, social distance was in place. Hand sanitizer, masks, etc., etc. I definitely had a favourite. The second one, the Black Lives Matter, was a lot more spacious and a lot more well organised. I was right in front at the stage. I had my camera with me. It was a great, informative day. But when it came to peacefulness and not peacefulness, the first one, the Black Voices Matter, my mate drove down. We parked at the bottom of Leeds city centre. So once it was all done, we're walking down where it's slightly more, not rough, except had this incident occur. So as we're coming around the corner, I'll just get to the point. So we're coming around the corner and we're talking about people that are vocal against this movement. And I said to my mates, you got to have some balls on you in Leeds, because Leeds is such a multicultural place. There's people of all colours everywhere. So as we're coming around the corner, there's this guy and a blue Stone Island and a bald head.
Right, I can already sense
yeah.
what might be about to happen in this story.
And then he's got a fat pal with him, only 2 of them. And they're on the other side of a fence, a builder's fence, because it was by the Leeds Theatre that's getting work done. But bearing in mind, this fence ain't that long. It's only about, 15 metres long. So they start shouting, not necessarily us, well, literally to us, because we had our signs and other people had our signs, but right in front of us were these, I almost looked like, the perfect multicultural set of friends. Those white people, Asian people, mixed race lads, black lads, and they start shouting, all lives matter, whatever like this. And my mate decides to follow all these boys that they're shouting. I'm leave it alone. And they start chasing them up the street. I decide to stick with my other 2 other mates. I'm just what's he doing? Don't condone violence. That's what they want. But he goes up there and he comes back and he said, I didn't do anything. I just watched these 10 lads kick the shit out of them 2 boys. And what? As much as this movement does not condone violence in any way, if anyone's going to get the shit kicked out of them, it will be a bald guy in a Stone Island shouting "Our lives matter." Did you see that thing from it was on Twitter or something like that, and they used images from a Tommy Robinson rally, and it was in the Sun, let's say. It might not have been the Sun, but the Sun is a bastard newspaper, so we'll say the Sun anyway.
Yeah, something along those lines. With the same agenda.
Yeah. And they used those photos of violence against police to say that that's what happened at the BLM process. And it was, ridiculous. Even that video with the horse that day in London, the most violence that happened to that police was someone threw a fucking ball. And that was it. I wasn't there, but,
Yeah, I definitely think that one of the biggest problems about that kind of propaganda in the media, is that so much is made out of so little on the side of anti-racism. Whereas if you look at so much of the things that that pro-racists literally go out and do, especially when they confront rallies of anti-racism, especially in this movement where it's been shown, is it's almost always going to be either violent or verbalizing hatred, showing that basically they are prepared to be violent, even if they aren't at that very moment. And it's just horrible having that juxtaposition. They are literally just trying to be accepted and have their lives valued. That's what it's about, really, or one of the things it's about. Whereas on the other side, there are people that are 100%, they're ready to be violent and hateful. And the fact that these 2 sides are still clashing just baffles me, because I think it's just so it's so inexplainable because there isn't really any argument to support that hatred, I think.
Yeah. Do you think that their sort of want to be violent comes with the fact that they are also racist as well? Like their want to be hateful to other people also links to how they might also be incredibly, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's all part of the same kind of upbringing and indoctrination, should we say?
Yeah. Well, hate stems from fear, and why do they hate? Because they see on the news the bigoted, wrong news that so and so black, age whatever, 6 foot whatever, committed this crime, committed this murder, committed this act of terrorism. They truly believe that, and that stems from the top. That these people are doing this when, you know, it's not the case at all.
Yeah,
I can't remember the figures, and I'm not going to give the figures of the amount of, like, you know, chances that you're going to be killed by a white person in America versus you know, black person in America, or the amount of people committing crimes versus, you know, white people committing crimes versus black people crimes in Britain. But it does just stem from this sense of, well, a point that we're going to go into is education, but as well as the media and what you're watching and what you're consuming.
Yeah, I think the media definitely play a huge part in how they represent black people and how they represent.
What did you boys study again?
Just we both did TV production, so obviously
they're going deep into the belly of the beast.
Yeah,
they're gonna fix it from the inside.
Well, I mean, it's always apparent that media has always been a huge source of things like propaganda,
manipulation.
Even going back to, it's very clear, you know, when you go to wartime, propaganda is used to basically indoctrinate whichever nation it's used in. This whole decade has still been filled with essentially propaganda and just misrepresentation in the media, which plays into this whole debate hugely. And I think, you know, you'd agree with me, Connor.
Yeah. And what was that quote that I said to you earlier, Connor, was that capitalism cannot survive without racism.
Yes.
You know, it does boil down to, you know, money and greed and so on and so forth. But interestingly, what you were saying about I can't remember, but I'm just going to make this point.
It didn't matter anyway. It's fine. Yeah.
It was Michael Moore's documentary Bowling for Columbine, and that's all about, you know, gun control in America and so on and so forth.
That one's really powerful as well.
Yeah, that's amazing documentary.
Yeah.
But there's that scene where he confronts the producer of the American TV show Cops, and that documentary is like 20 plus years old. And he's saying, like, why are you going to take this down? You know, all that you show is young black males getting arrested every night. And only now, after this, not movement, but after this, you know, reignitement of the movement, has it been cancelled? So I think we're like, this original part that we were talking about is what is changing, or like the good things that are happening. That's one.
Yeah.
No, that's actually you've I think raised actually quite a good point here, right? Which I was thinking about earlier was how much do you guys agree with the cancellation of certain shows? I know there's a lot of debate over some shows and some films that have been taken off Netflix and other platforms. I think if we start with you, Ronan, actually, because obviously, being from a TV background, I think I'm quite interested to see what you have to say about this.
Obviously, I think that it's definitely a good thing that people have kind of acknowledged it, but I think that it's almost like it could be a distraction from the point, and it's kind of like a means of immediate satisfaction. And I think this is a huge thing that needs to be noticed, because when things happen, like, for example, the 4 police officers who are now being put under way more pressure because of the Black Lives Matter movement that has been pressing them since George Floyd's death, those 4 officers have since been persecuted. And I think that the persecution of that and similar incidents where there is action being taken because of protests and stuff like that, that is really good and a positive result, because that is justice. But I think that this taking down of TV shows is just another way of temporary distraction and satisfaction that they're trying to give, and then being like, okay, now we've solved the problem. We've done what you've asked. We've arrested these 4 people. We've done what you asked. We've taken down this offensive stuff. But it's like, have they actually changed their policies? Have they actually done what should be changed within the system, rather than just saying, okay, we'll take that specific case and we'll fix that specific problem? And that's why so many people, so taking the 2 incidents of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, those 2 people are still being like, say her name, there's no justice being served for Breonna Taylor. And I think that, why is that not being addressed? Whereas the other 4, the officers have been persecuted for it. And I think that the taking down of TV shows is an easy to understand example of how institutions and organizations have been putting a temporary blanket over this whole situation, thinking that they've done a lot of good, when really that's not what they should be fixing. They should be looking at it at a more, closer to the roots of the problem.
Totally.
So that's kind of all I really wanted to say on specifically.
And Maris?
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that at all. So, I think it's what you're saying. It's a distraction piece almost. And I've been to the protests and I've been following the movement online. Not a single person's been holding a cardboard sign saying, "Take down Little Britain, take down the mighty Bush." However, speaking of Little Britain, and speaking of Come Fly With Me, for example, or even Monty Python, John Cleese was in an article and he spoke about how he didn't think that it should be taken down. They were attacking the problem. They were making fun of it. And, it's an intelligent way to talk about racism. The same way that some episodes are It's Always in Sun in Philadelphia. They address it. But let's say the exact example of Come Fly With Me, you've got the coffee vendor who's lazy, who don't want to work, who's got the big cartoon looking features. And then you've got the Martin Clune fans, which is just straight up racism. But you've also got the customs guy who appears to be that very conservative, right-wing guy that we've all met. And that's a smart piece of comedy. The other ones are just bowing down to stereotypes. And even though I do agree with you and think that this is just a big distraction piece, not part of the real problem, it's talking about people's lives, not people's leisure time, there is a correct way to approach that topic in comedy in an appropriate way. Am I the one that could answer that? No. But also to speak to the people that are getting really annoyed by it, don't take our bloody shows. I remember seeing it on Facebook and a guy actually commented, "What's next, Blazing Saddles?" That's one of my favourite films. And I don't argue with people on Facebook, but I was just well, that's an example of intelligent comedy tackling the issue.
Yeah.
However, my final point would be, if people want these shows down for the moment, take them down, support it, whatever. It's a small piece of the puzzle. And if you're so annoyed that you can't watch this show, do you remember DVDs? Just go out and buy it. If you love Come Fly With Me that much, go buy it.
Yeah. It's not like it's written off forever, is it?
Yeah.
Speaking of types of ways of intelligently getting your point across, you obviously do a lot of artwork, Maris.
I do.
And you've actually done your own artwork, which you did it quite a few years ago, I'm pretty sure, didn't you?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you want to explain it a little bit more? We will actually have this come up on the screen if you're watching on YouTube.
Yeah. So I done this piece about 4.5, maybe 5 years ago. And it was probably the last, maybe not the last, but one of the spikes that brought the BLM movement again into the media and the press. And it was Clancy Wiggum from The Simpsons and Eddie and another guy dressed up in the KK uniforms and Lou, the black police officer in The Simpsons, walking in. And it was called, I called it Some of Those Workforces, which is a Rage Against the Machine lyric that goes on to say, are the same that burn crosses. And it was to say that, you know, police officers have very similar ideals to that of the KKK. And speaking, going back to Michael Moore, gun control, KKK came around the exact same time in America, but, you know, no, NRA after. Just go watch Bowling for Columbine. But anyway, so I revisited this piece, changed it up, and I'm starting to sell it on Etsy. Well, I've been selling it on Etsy for about a month now. Get a print for £6, get a sticker for £3, and all the profits from that go to Stop Hate UK.
Yeah, it's a brilliant cause as well, and I think it's clever as well how you've incorporated something as popular as The Simpsons, which is, as you say, intelligent comedy. Like, it's come in and you've used, I guess, something that people recognise and instantly know to, you know, promote the movement. And I think it's such a good thing. And the incredible thing is also that you didn't just do this recently. This is something you did years and years ago, which again states how long this has been around for. Yeah, and it isn't just a current issue. It's something that's been around for quite a while. And so speaking of other artists, obviously, I know you've sort of said to me beforehand, before we've recorded this, do you think artists in this day and age should have possibly more responsibility, or should they have more responsibility to use their craft to spread a message?
I've always took it on myself that you have this platform, and every piece of art I've made for like the past 6 years, other than say commissions for friends and stuff or diddles that I've done, everyone that I've wanted to exhibit or be a professional piece of art has always had this sort of social conscious message that it will lead to some sort of change in the viewer that engages in it. And I'm not saying that every artist has to make something that is political or social or so on, because there's a lot more stuff out there that people need that isn't that. But I think at the moment, your platform, you should use it the best of your ability. Example, what you two are doing right now. And I can give you names and speak briefly on, like, I've just got 4 artists written down who all went to my uni in the year below. You can check out their work on Instagram and on their end of year show that they unfortunately don't have.
Yeah, we'll chuck it in the description actually, so that people can check that out.
Yeah, their end of year show that they were actually robbed of, obviously, because of Corona. But you've got Rafael Dada, or A.D. Dada, who's a printmaker, painter, illustrator, poet. And his final piece was a really powerful film about racism in Britain, similar to Lydia Owen, who was all about being a multicultural woman and like sort of protest art in this time. I'm obviously like paraphrasing it here, but do go check out their work. Another guy that I even put up his poem today was Zama Jumbo, who done a really powerful poem and animation along with it. And then another one is Lucy Pina, who's been doing all illustrative like zines about Afro-American black culture and hip hop and all sorts of stuff and that. And it's really amazing stuff. And I just think if I could think of relevant local artists at the moment, those are the ones that come to head.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's good that you're using sort of names as well that aren't maybe as well known to a lot of people as well.
Definitely.
So probably something we haven't touched on as much is maybe how people can tackle this issue when they're unsure of how to do it. So, how do people become informed if they're afraid to say something wrong? And I think this is definitely on social media. Like a lot of people I've noticed have tried to do the right thing. For example, with the black squares, tried to promote it, but then it's because so many people are doing it and then use the hashtag. It's just It's not really creating awareness. It's more just all the important stuff has got lost in it. So I think people have been confused about how to get involved in it. Would you guys agree with that?
I definitely think that when I opened my phone and I looked at it and it was all these black squares, I had two feelings. Like the first feeling was like, wow,
Yeah.
like that is impressive. That is emotive, and it made me. Well, now it makes me think of another guy who I used to get the bus with, who was like the Afro-Caribbean leader in his leader of his society in Nottingham, and it said that we are living in the new civil rights movement, and that is one thing that gives me hope and continue to do this. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I was the same. I was like, yeah, right, like this is wow, like just every whole of Instagram's been blacked out. Like it was. Yeah, it was powerful. Yeah. It was, for sure. For looking, first time you go on Instagram that morning was like, what?
Yeah. But at the same time, you've got fucking backhand of it, which is, where are those people now? What else have they posted? A lot of them have probably deleted it. You know, like you say, some of the relevant stuff got lost when they used Black Lives Matter movement to be, because what's the term? It's the, it slips my mind, but it's like it's the fake posting. It's the, like fake allyship.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah,
the sort of herd mentality that goes along with it.
Herd mentality. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think that I definitely had the same. I almost had exactly the same response as you, Maz, in terms of one. Yeah, it was really powerful, and I think that's kind of undisputed. But two, honestly, yeah, exactly the same when it comes to like. But do these people actually understand what they're doing? And do these people, are they doing it for more than simply adding that to their, to their page? If you go on their profile and they think, oh yeah, also on my profile is that black square from when I joined in on that day, you know? And I looked into quite a lot of, trying to be an anti-racist ally. And one of the things I kind of found was, trying to utilize our voice, which is also one of the reasons why I think it's good that we're doing this, because, if you have a voice and you can reach people, do use it, because only you could reach your network in a way. But one thing was that, you should be doing actions, you should be trying to help in ways that are, well, to explain this in a better way, essentially posting is not an action. Yeah. It's good. And I'm not going to tell anyone to stop posting. And I'm not going to tell anyone that they were wrong to put that black square on their Instagram. I mean, we did it.
Yeah,
but,
of course, it's
literally like that is something that is on, if you go on our Instagram right now, it was there. And I'm not boasting on that. That's simply, it's not an action putting a post up on social media. No. It is good because it spreads awareness, and it is good because it shows that you're on that side that, that you care. And if you keep doing it, it's good because people need to keep being told and keep being made aware of these things, especially when it comes to certain messages like microaggressions. If I wasn't actually sure what that actually meant until I saw a post on social media about it. So I'm not going to tell people that posting is bad, but it's not an action. And if you want to become an anti-racist ally, then you need to do more than that. And actions, there are emails, phone calls, letters, donations, signing petitions, having conversations about it. These kind of things are actions, and these kind of things do a lot of good. And whilst posting is good, it's not enough. And I think that you shouldn't be complacent beyond that. And you shouldn't be thinking that, oh, well, I posted about it, so that's my part done. That is not, that's not an action that contributes to it that much.
Yeah, it's the first step.
I'm not trying to say that it's bad, but that's, my 2 cents is issue that I've kind of found that it's not anywhere near enough to just to post things every now and then. Because some people kind of see that as them doing their part and then they can switch off, you know?
Oh, most definitely.
And that's very much not okay to do that in a way, because, people can't switch off the color of their skin.
Mhm.
And if you think that you can be helpful, one part of the week, and that's you being an ally, that's not exactly accurate. And, I feel kind of silly saying this because I am just a white person talking about this subject in general. But it is true that you should be going above and beyond, just like you would for other things that you really cared about. You should be going above and beyond for this movement.
Yeah, and there's so many people. I think when we're talking about social media, it's a powerful tool. I get like a lot of people. It's almost privilege, maybe not even white privilege. That's just like a modern day westernized privilege to be able to use that tool, and you should use it to the best of your ability. And the amount of templates that people made for your local MP or your mayor, and like the change.org, I've fucking signed something on that every couple of days or every day. You have to go on, you have to confirm your email, there you do, and it leads to something. And there's like 4 other websites similarly set up to that. And even like you say, the benefits of social media, Stop Hate, the charity that I've decided to donate to recently, I found that out through social media. And also, we'll link this below, hopefully. There's a good article in The Independent called Black Lives Matter, 10 anti-racism charities you can donate to in the UK. We'll get that below.
Again, we'll link that as well in the description. I will see realistic what we're going to be doing in terms of that at the end of this podcast episode. Now, obviously, we were talking about education or educating people, but going on to education, something that I've seen a lot, and I'm sure you boys have seen as well, and all you listeners as well, is that we should be taught in school from an early age more about racism and about black culture.
And
the history of it. Because there isn't enough in it. And would you sort of have to go on about that? Do you have any examples of maybe when you're in school? Do you remember anything at all about ever learning about anything to do with it? Because I only did history up to year 9, and I don't think I ever really remember learning much about black history apart from maybe the slave trade.
Yeah. Well, I learned probably nothing about the slave trade, considering I think I remember learning a little bit about Jamaica's flag and why it's like the Scotland flag, and I remember learning that in primary school, and then I had to research that myself actually relatively recently.
I never actually realised that. It's such an obvious thing now. I think about it. The flags,
and the amount of streets in Glasgow that are named after.
Actually, going back to it, why? Sorry, just I know it's a bit off. But what can you remember?
I cannot. I do not want to say it wrong.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's fair. Yeah. Really.
If you just research Scotland and Glasgow's involvement in the slave trade, it is really shocking as well as interesting. But like one that sticks out in my mind, that's partly all that I remember. But the only other thing that I remember was the civil rights movement. Done that in GCSE history, of which I got a D. And I picked up that textbook about a month ago, 5 weeks ago, whatever.
I love how no one said anything when you said a D. We kind of just laughed awkwardly.
I kind of found it funny because I also got a D in GCSE history, which is probably why I don't remember anything that we got taught.
We weren't in the same class, Ronan, but we would have had that same textbook. So I picked up that textbook about 5 weeks ago, and I remember that it's got this rundown of Malcolm X's life. It goes from this to that, goes to Mecca, he does this, and then it finishes on Malcolm X was murdered by 3 members of the Nation of Islam. And I remember that striking a cause in me because one, I'd like learned from Malcolm X through like Rage Against the Machine and hip hop and stuff like that wasn't necessarily true. And then I'd done my own research on it. And then watching the Netflix documentary, Who Killed Malcolm X, which I'm halfway through now. Every single historian will say that it wasn't 3 members, or every single respected historian won't say that it was 3 members. They'll say it was 5, and they won't necessarily say it was the members of the Nation of Islam. It was like, came from the government, you came from the CIA, it came from this, came from that. And that's just an example of this whitewashed, I'm not going to say lies, but definitely not truth that we're given. So the only example, obviously it went into the civil rights, the Black Lives Matter, and it was so brief, like, a page on each, Martin Luther King, a page on each of them. But it was just this washed down, undigestible information that was just, you can find out a whole lot more a couple of years later if you do your own research.
I think it's definitely something that does need to change, is the change in the education system with what they get taught in history. And interestingly, it's something that even some people who I've spoke to who might not be as supportive maybe with like the protests and stuff as other people, something they are very, very supportive of is the education system and changing it. I think that's something that everybody agrees with pretty firmly as well, because it does lie from an early age, if you're, and obviously an upbringing we were talking about earlier, that if you are educated from an early age, about the topic and how not to be racist, obviously, you're kind of brought up to believe in that.
It's something that you're taught racism.
Yeah, it's not something you're born to do. Well, maybe Tommy Robinson was, I don't know.
A lot of people during this movement have said about being complacent, and that is a real big thing. Doing nothing is huge in a sense that it allows these things to fester. Because, you mentioned and talked about Malcolm X. He was assassinated a few years after Martin Luther King Jr., and that was in the 1960s, I think, the early 1960s, I think it was.
Yeah, he was 65, MLK was 68.
And it's showing that they had that fight their whole lives, and things haven't changed. And I think another thing that I think is worth saying is that because we're English and we live in the UK, I think we need to understand that a lot of what we hear about, the civil rights movement and, those two especially have really big names in the history of this anti-racist struggle. And I think that it's important to acknowledge the fact that it's not that bad in England. It's like America's really bad. We hear a lot about that on the news, but in England, it's not so bad. And I think it's important to simply say that it is terrible in England.
Yeah.
It's terrible across the UK. It's just as bad. Just because we have a smaller population doesn't mean that, it's still going on, and it has been going on since then. Yeah. And I think that's why it's getting increasingly more important that people of all races step up and work together, essentially, to try and do these kind of things and try and, to join the protests, to educate yourself. I think one of the biggest things that you can do, if you're listening to this, literally go down into the description and there will be all the things that we've talked about so far and we'll talk about. Just begin to educate yourself, because that is one of the first steps, one of the biggest steps you can take. Stop expecting things to be okay because you're okay. No one's saying, I'm not saying educate yourself because you're a racist. I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to accuse anyone, but I am saying that being more aware is something that is your responsibility, and educating yourself is your responsibility, especially if you're an adult, especially if you're even a teenager. Anyone with access to Google and with, proper conscious thought now that they're growing up, it's your responsibility to go out and find out for yourself these things that can help you be more, how should I say, accepting of what you can do to help and what you can do to become an ally. And it's not just anyone else's job to educate you.
Just a well-rounded person.
What does the Cala say? Knowledge is power.
No, fully.
KRS-One, what does that stand for? Knowledge reigns supreme over nearly everybody.
Wow. Yeah, let's look at the brains on you. Well, no,
check out the big brains on red.
Speaking of maybe powerful figures maybe at the time, actually, I have to rephrase that. Statues. Now, this is a very topical thing. This is probably one of the last things we'll talk about today. So obviously the big one was the Edward Colston statue being taken down in Bristol and being chucked into the, I don't want to say it's the river. Is it the river? I can't remember what's called. The docks. The docks. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, people. Anyone who lives in Bristol.
Any of you river / dock experts listening out there?
That was poor on my part. Right. So the main sort of talking point is, should it be allowed? Should it be allowed? And I know, obviously, I think I know what you guys are going to say on this.
Allowed?
Not allowed. Okay. Maybe I haven't phrased that the best. Is it acceptable for these statues to be removed because of who they are, or because of what they've done?
To be removed because of what they've done from a public space, yes.
Yes.
To be torn down in the eyes of law, no. But I got, I hope my mum's not listening, but I got bloody semi when I watched that video. That was I regret not being in Britain. That is the voice of the people.
That was, I thought it was very powerful, and it was almost that. I mean, I like that kind of rebellious side of seeing things like seeing the people take power of things. I think it was very powerful. Regardless, I know there's a lot of people, maybe even some people listening right now who think that, their statues should be taken away and put into museums and things like that. There should be historical artifacts, etc., etc. And I think it is a good argument, definitely. Obviously, I know that was, I as you say, I think it was just watching that getting, pushed into the docks. Yeah, I think there was something so satisfying about watching that. I don't know what it was about it that made it so satisfying, but I think there could have almost been anything. I would have enjoyed it, but it was just
I think it's again back to we're living in this new civil rights movement that it's no longer just a conversation and it's on the news for a week. We're not going to let this momentum die. And if it has to come to those really strong demonstrations of the voice of the people and the power being in the people, because let's face it, that's what it is. Yeah. You seen Bug's Life? No, that's we do have that power to make this change. And I know as soon as I seen that, and I seen other people doing it to other statues, I ordered 50 cans of spray paint, and I just wanted to start doing this thing that I used to do, but I never had the money when I was a student. But now I'm working. Now I can actually go out and spray paint, and I've been doing that a few times over the past couple of weeks. And I just wanted, I know that's a different example, but it's criminal damage.
But it's the same sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's taking your actions from beyond a protest, beyond a post or a conversation. It's taking it to the street. It's taking it to something that is deemed illegal. Yeah. But you're doing it for...
At the same time, though, if you saw someone you wouldn't see him, but Banksy, for example, is a prime example of this, and no one, in fact, his work is then showcased. People is protected, and that never gets called out for criminal damage or anything like that. I always think it falls under the same category. Maybe I'm wrong, but the other thing then, the other statue then, which is obviously caused a lot more debate. We spoke about World War II and the propaganda earlier in that. Winston Churchill.
Fuck Churchill.
So I think I know where this is going. So, but what do you think? Obviously, we've already talked about the All Lives Matter movement and the EDL movement going over and defending this statue, or maybe they're not EDL, maybe they're just, a lot of the media call them mindless thugs, whatever you want to call them, going and defend this statue. This one seems to have caused a lot more debate. I've seen online on social media a lot of people saying that he obviously, saved us in the war, etc., etc. We could be under a Nazi regime, an even more racist regime right now. Had he, what? I try and talk me through it because I
don't know if I'm going to be able to answer this question successfully do it. I think it's a lot more complicated, this one. And I think when push comes to shove, there are a lot more things that you could spend your time on than getting the statue of Churchill taken down in this movement, the things that we've discussed in that. But, I will say Churchill was such a racist, like, you know, not that any other prime ministers aren't, but like, you know, he contributed to the genocide of, what is it, between 3 and 4 million people, Ronan? I know you know this. 3 and 4 million.
There's actually multiple different cases in multiple countries of things directly happening under Churchill that were like concentration camps. I listened to a podcast, which again I'll link below. I think it's the Blind Boy podcast.
The cracking podcast.
And it basically just tells you all of what you need to know of why that statue of Churchill should not be given the respect that it is given. And so basically he talks a lot about iconoclasm, and that's essentially the removal of icons. And that's most obvious in like taking down the statue of Edward Colston. And when you literally remove a statue, and I think it's important to acknowledge, one, that it's only symbolic and it's not really going to change much, but it is very important to do so. And leaving it up is just another way of affirming that racism isn't as bad as what he's done is good. You know what I mean? There are so many quotes that you can find online if you want to, that just prove how racist Churchill was. But I'll just say one, just so while we're on the topic of Churchill's statue in particular. So this is his words, I think, from a memo that he made. It reads, "I am strongly in favor of using poison gas against uncivilized tribes." That is Churchill, the war hero, I'll say that, like, you know, in quotes. And he's saying that he was an extremely racist person. You know, there's nothing wrong with taking it down because of the wrong that he's done.
Even putting it in the museum, as we were saying before, you know.
Okay, I think that one thing that we should do, and I would just love to see this, is take down statues like Edward Colston, who was a slave trader, take down the statue of Churchill, because he was a profoundly racist man, and we shouldn't aspire to have heroes that are racist. Like, I just think that that's stupid. And I think if you're going to take them down, put them in a giant museum in the middle of the capital that is simply named, like, Britain is racist or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, and literally acknowledge our past as having a racist past. That doesn't mean that we need to be racist now. And it's not saying
that sounds like an Imagine Things podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to go to that museum and find out about our racist past and to educate myself on what was done in the past that was wrong, knowing that because you've called it a derogatory sort of, it's not like, oh, the wonders of Britain slave trade. You know what I mean? Like, knowing that you're going into there to learn about things that shouldn't have been done, I think is a very important way of sending that message that when we look back on it, it shouldn't be in a positive way. And I think that that is the only place that I think the statues like then should stay. You know, I genuinely think that it should be taken down. And I think that people putting protective covers over that simply haven't been educated well enough. And I think that their arguments against it, for example, sorry if I'm going along for ages about this, but
no, it's relevant.
No.
People who defend him were saying that he, you know, helped defeat Hitler. And there are so many things off about that because of how you're treating other people who fought in the war and other people who were black who fought in the armed forces. There was multiple cases, but I was reading one the other day. Like, I don't even want to go into specifics because honestly, there are many, many cases of this happening where black men have been in the army, the British army, and then come back home and being discriminated against, and some even killed. They've lost their lives because of racists, even though they fought for the country that those racists live in. And I think that, like, those people got treated so badly, even though they fought in that war. And like an example of this to show, you know, because you guys will know that everyone who listens to this will have heard and know who Barack Obama is. His grandfather, I don't even think it was his great-grandfather, but it was his grandfather or his great-grandfather. He fought in both World War One and World War Two, and Churchill put him in a concentration camp for 4 years, I think it was, and he was like tortured daily. Like, so it's like you're defending a hero, so they say, even though they like performed atrocities because of one thing that, like, well, not one thing. Obviously, I'm not diminishing the fact that the victory of the Second World War was a good thing. I believe it was, but you need to realize that there are other people in that war who don't get the same treatment as him. Why are we putting him on a pedestal like that? And I think we need to take that consideration into every single icon that we have and tear down any of them that have, like, we shouldn't have those people on a pedestal. We should have other people's. There's a whole other thing of submersive iconoclasm, which is literally simply replacing and putting up new icons that are things that we should be rallying behind. And I think that is something that a lot of people haven't really thought about in this movement of taking down statues. I think we should think about the icons that we do give ourselves and the people that we pride in being British, whether they be white British, black British, or any other minority. We should find these new icons and rally behind those. I won't say too much more because
it's. I think it's when you go into the point. When you go into the point of Churchill, I think the further you go into it, actually, the more the argument of maybe sort of taking down that statue makes sense. I do agree though with Moraes though, in terms of, I think there's definitely more ways that you can channel your frustration, your energy, than trying to get that statue removed. And ways that you can, make the difference without doing that. But as you say, it's a very well structured point, actually, Ronan. Very, very well structured. Just one more thing then, that I think I'm going to go on to ask you boys. The sort of last thing, and this is a very difficult question, I think, to answer in a lot of ways, but I'm going to ask you anyway, is do you think that there is or will be an end to racism?
We were talking about this earlier, and I think that it's up to us. If you want to see it ended, you're going to see it ended because you're going to contribute to it. Or maybe not you're going to see it ended, but you're going to make it end because of what you say, what you teach your children, what you teach your parents even. Like those awkward conversations when someone makes a racist joke, or confronting it when you see it in the workplace, on the bus. We've all got cameras. It doesn't have to be violent. It doesn't have to be, long-winded. It's just like, I don't know, it's like a Key and Peele sketch when he's playing the guitar and it's like a singing a racist song. It says, whoa, that's racist. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. It's not like ethnic banter, which I've heard, and I've probably seen people say, "Oh no, it's a building say you don't get it." So shut up, no. Just I'm oversimplifying it, but I think if we continue to do what we're doing and not let this momentum die, it will end. And I think it goes beyond socially, because that's the examples I'm giving. But revolution starts at home. It starts at the community. And then the power that we have, if we keep on this track, we can filter it up and we can start a lot of change. But I think we've all said it in one way or another. It's not just a post. It's not just this. It's every day you got to fight it.
Yeah. Do you agree as well with what Moraes is saying there, Brendan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the question, as stated, I think is a very difficult one to answer as a yes or no.
Yes,
for one.
It is, yeah. As stated, very difficult to answer, yeah.
But like you're saying, when you ever get a chance to call it out, that's your opportunity to extinguish racism. There's nothing less than that. You can stop it there and then. It doesn't matter if it's happening somewhere else because you can't be anywhere else, But if you can help it where you are, then that's that's good enough for that moment, and you should always be not looking for it, but you should always be aware that it's there and it can be there. And if you see it, you should be aware that you can change it. And I think that it's also very important that, that a lot of the voices you hear in this movement are black. And I think that it's important to listen to black voices in Black Lives Matter movement, obviously. But I think as a white person, it's your responsibility to join the movement. And I think that's also why I thought that I would be as outspoken as I am now about it, because, if it's just this won't end if white people are just simply saying, yeah, sure, we need to join it and be just as active as the black community in Black Lives Matter. Otherwise, it's not gonna, because certain voices, certain people, should I say, for whatever reason, will only listen to a white voice, or even by extension, those people might only ever really listen to a white male voice. And that means that you need to step up and, help. And even if you might be getting it slightly wrong, which we might have even probably have done during this podcast,
I know I have.
You need to try, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You need to try and help. And that is all you can do.
It's being aware, isn't it? It's being aware. It helps. Well, be the difference, be the change. And I guess there's no justice. If there's no justice, there's no peace. And until then, until that point, but hopefully we do get there. I think we're going to end it on that. Obviously, thank you, Marius, for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me, boss.
No worries,
it's been a pleasure.
You have brought some really tremendous points and some really valid points as well. Obviously, Ronan, I know I've orchestrated this more. Ronan has obviously really done your research on this, so hats off to you. Really, because hats off to both of you. Hats off to us. Do you know what? We've all done a good job. Without going into too much, we are obviously going to be leaving a lot in the description on this video. Obviously, if you're on SoundCloud, probably go and check it on YouTube. We're going to be leaving, obviously, all the charities that you can donate to, ways you can get involved, ways you can educate yourself. I'll also be leaving Merez's details, not his address, don't go to his house, but his Instagram. You can check out his artwork as well. And he's got more to come, so do keep your eyes peeled. More in the works.
Also, something, sorry to interrupt, but just a few things that I've been, that we've all been watching, listening to, reading. So that list is going to be long in the description, but more ways to educate yourself.
And if you haven't done so, because we've all said it like multiple times, go down to the description right now.
Please do.
You can donate, or you can sign petitions, or do any of that. There are so many things that simply start with the description that we've been given. There are different things to do with different networks, like people who have come together to talk about policy and create discussion. There's multiple groups that, across the UK, which we'll be honing in on simply UK organisations, because obviously we are in the UK, and you should become as aware as possible as you can be of all these things. So just go through and start there, but do not stop at what we've been giving you. Go, and even if it's just simply typing into Google BLM, educate yourself, that's enough. Just start there, go on the Black Lives Matter card, and just see what you can do, because you'll be surprised at how much and how easy it is for you to educate yourself, because it's no one else's job to do that. If you haven't done that after all of these times, just do it now, please.
A lot of that is free as well.
It's on your own time. I think that's the important thing. It's on your own time. Be the difference, make the difference. Thank you very much, boys. Marius, thank you for coming on. Hats off to you. And Ronan, hats off to you as always.
Hats off to you, Con.
Hats off to you. And we'll see you all soon. Take care. Have a good one.